We were blessed, I guess, to be introduced by my niece, who's a Branson student. And she said, anyway, I'm glad she's not here because she probably wouldn't forgive me, but I'm going to read a little tiny piece of what she wrote. It was so beautiful. She said, confusion stacked by my bed. Why me? Why us? Why you? Why him? Why me? Is it just bad luck? Is it just random? Is it just the time for me to experience the pain and the fear? I don't remember how it started, and I don't remember how it ended, but it affected everyone in my family, even if we didn't show it. Now that it's been written down on paper from two very different perspectives, I start to remember. I start to remember the whispered discussion during dinner with the family, the confusion of my little cousins when their brother didn't come home, and the whole sense of uncertainty that engulfed our family. No one knew what was going to happen or how it was going to end. I don't even think people understood where it started. The drugs often, maybe always, have less to do with drugs. Drug using really isn't necessarily about drugs. Instead, it's about life, and more specifically, it's about avoiding life. Because drugs do what they promise. They don't call it getting high for nothing, and they don't call it ecstasy for nothing. They make us feel more, and they also make us feel less. Drugs help us feel the things that we don't want to feel, that no one wants to feel. I mean, what teenager, what one of your children doesn't feel sometimes alienated, or shy, inadequate, insecure about their friends or about sex, or lonely or isolated or angry? Drugs can make life seem easier to navigate, and for some people they make life feel possible to navigate. The writer Chuck Palahniuk, in one of his novels, wrote, with drugs you can go without feeling anything except stoned or drunk or hungry. Still, when you compare this to other feelings, to sadness, anger, fear, worry, despair, and depression, well, an addiction no longer looks so bad. It looks like a very viable option. And it looks, one of the things that I remember too is that we're telling our kids about drugs, we're warning them about drugs, and yet, what are we really telling them? What are we telling them by the way we live? People ask, someone asks us how we're doing, and we always say we're great, we're fine. But look in our medicine cabinets, look in America's medicine cabinet, and there are our drugs to sleep, our drugs to wake up, to lose weight, to calm down, for energy, drugs for sex, to work, for strength, for every headache, stomachache, for depression, for every ailment, real and imagined, and for every mood, ache and pain, for sports and for studying, for work and play, when we're anxious, when we're sad, when we're angry, lethargic. There's a pill to assuage every discomfort, every variation of mental state, to take the edge off. Obviously, some of those drugs are essential and they save lives, but really, so many of them are about the same thing. It's about feeling less. It's about feeling, blocking the things that we don't want to feel. I think as parents, we look for reassurance to tell us how our kids are doing, and so we look on the outside of our children. We look to these barometers, and they reassure us. And Nick was, according to all those barometers, according to what was going on from the outside, Nick was doing fine. In fact, he was doing great. He was a really good student, and he, all the things. He was an athlete. He was on the varsity swim team and water polo team. And he acted in plays at school, and he was a musician, and he was a student journalist. Nick is a great kid. Drugs are out there. It's not unusual for someone to try them. Nick's really engaged. He's a leader. All the things we wanted to hear. And so we were worried, and we did what they told us. He went to a day of drug and alcohol counseling. But also we were assured, and Nick also told us what we wanted to hear, which was, I was stupid, I was with a bunch of kids who were smoking, and I didn't like it anyway, and I'll never do it again. By the time he was a senior in high school, things escalated to the point that there were a lot of warning signs that now looking back I realized that I should have paid closer attention to, but I still was focused on these outside things, and Nick still told me what I wanted to hear. I'd never do anything stupid. He would go to parties, but I'll never get in the car with anyone who's high. And you know, he was destined for college in the fall. He was going to go to Berkeley, and so there were these two parallel things going on. And one of them was telling me, maybe, you know, there's something wrong. Something's wrong. What are we going to do? Something's wrong. But the other one was, Nic's fine. You know, what kids don't experiment. He's going to move on. You know, it's sort of like we have this idea of what's going to happen for our children. He's going to go to high school, and he's going to college, and he's going to, you know, so that's where we're going. And there was no way that that I could sort of conceive that things were going to get derailed in the way that they did. Did I spoil him? Was I too lenient? Did I give him too little attention? Too much? If only I myself had never used drugs. If only his mother and I had stayed together. Guilt and self-blame and regret are typical responses of addicts' parents, but they're useless and incapacitating, yet I can't silence them. I never for a minute forget how close I came to losing him. Addiction, alcoholism, they're diseases, and somehow we resist this idea. We can't accept it because this disease doesn't look at their disease. How can a disease make a child or make someone else that we love turn against us and lie to us and break into our homes and do, you know, unconscionable things? But I came to understand that my child would not have done any of these things if he was not very, very ill. My son had a mental illness, and I did everything I could to help him. And he said, it's just like if one of our children had any other disease. I mean, if your child was diagnosed with cancer or with, I mean, any disease, what would you do? You would take them to the best doctors you could find. You'd get second opinions, third opinions maybe, and then you'd get them the best treatment you could find, that you could afford, that your insurance would cover. And hopefully it would work, and then, you know, they would be well, or they would go into remission and they would come home and everything would be fine. And but we all know with a disease like cancer, sometimes it comes back, and what would you do then? Well, you would do the same thing. You would get them the best doctor that you could find, and the best treatment, and the best hospital, whatever it took. Well, with addiction, the relapse is very, very common, and just like with other diseases, with cancer, with a heart problem, with other serious illnesses, sometimes you can do everything right and they die. And it is tragic, and it is the truth. And it is why the urgency to figure out how better to talk to our children about drugs, to try to help them navigate a time in their life when they're going to be exposed and they're going to have to make decisions. Most of all, I'm proud of him for facing this with the kind of honesty that is so, so hard, but it is really what is required it's what's required to begin healing. And it is a really, Nic has said, it sucks to have this problem, to have this disease, to be a drug addict at 26 years old or any age. But to be a young man, to have to carry this on his shoulders and to understand that, you know, a glass of wine, all of his friends can go out and have a glass of wine or smoke a joint or whatever it is. He can't. And he faces this every day with bravery, and it's not easy. And so I will now introduce you to my son, Nic.